Okay. By the way, I'm Richard, as always. All right, cool. Hope you guys can hear and see us. Welcome to the third Counter-Strike Global Offensive Meetup. We're having some technical issues with Zoom regarding some passwords, which shouldn't be there, but like who knows with Zoom, right? But hopefully we'll record it for everyone who won't be able to join, and like I still hope we'll have some quality discussions regardless. My name is Egze. You already know me. I'm the host for this Counter-Strike Global Offensive Meetups. This is my third time hosting it. I'm an ex-Counter-Strike semi-professional player, so to say, and now like just an esports enthusiast. Joined with me today is Rudy Obris. Rudy, he's a competitive professional CSGO player. I'll let him introduce himself in a bit. And yeah, like the topic today would be like kind of get some ideas about like what to do once you get to the top 1%, or let's say top 1, top 10% of CSGO players. What should be your next steps? Where should you look at, and stuff like that. So welcome everybody. I'll hand it over to Rudy to shortly kind of present himself, and then we'll kick off with the discussion.
So hello, I'm Rudy, last name Ogres. That would also happen to be my nickname in game. And as Ixa said, I am a competitive player. Well, put the professional thing in heavy quotation marks because sadly in Slovenia, regarding CS, some other games we do have professional players, very good ones at that, for example, League of Legends. But in CS, we really don't have any Slovenian professional players. Some players are playing at a semi-pro level. But as far as professional goes, sadly, our scene is not quite there yet. And that's basically all there is to me. Mostly just, click around on heads, play some leagues here and there, which is what the case for most people who actually try to go pro and want to put effort into do.
All right, cool. Thanks. All right, so let's get into like first question, or like first topic, so to say. So after you reach kind of like your own skill ceiling, or like at the given point in time, right? What do you think, Rudy, would be the next steps you can take to further advance in like CSGO? Like, should you be searching for a team? Should you be practicing more? What do you think it's the best way forward?
So CS, luckily in this regard, is a game where you can reach a skill ceiling, but often it's kind of a false one. It's similar to a lot of cases where you reach the almost maximum, where progress just grinds to a halt, and it's really hard to keep getting better and better. And CS, especially in that regard, is notorious for having a skill ceiling that's so high. The differences even between very top professional teams, you have players who will absolutely dominate other professional players. And there's always room to get better. It's just going to be a long grind. So in that respect, it depends a lot on a player. For a lot of people, what they do right now, what the kind of standard pathway towards becoming a professional, semi-professional, however you do, is they start out with matchmaking. Obviously, this is what the base game, competitive game mode in CS is. And that's fine. You grind your way up. You start reaching the higher ranks. Let's say past DMG, you start getting, okay, there's some good players, and sadly there are a fair amount of cheaters, and then you usually swap over to a third-party matchmaking service. The current favorite is Faceit, and then you start playing there, and it's mostly the same as matchmaking in the regards that you usually don't really have a team. Maybe you play with some friends, right? And hey, maybe you make a team with those friends, but you play it, you grind it, and then you reach a certain level of, okay, you really need to start getting into team-based CS, because it's a completely different animal to what most people have been used to so far. And it's not even bad. For example, you rely on your aim, you pick up some good grenades, some good flashbangs, learn how to support some other players maybe. But then after you reach, for Faceit, this is around level 9, 10. Level 10 would be the top 1% on Faceit as of this moment, as we mentioned those percentages. That's when a lot of people actually do start searching for teams, because at some point aim, which is the core base component, is only going to get you so far. And you really do need to find some other people who are willing to actually take you in and teach you how to play as a teammate. Because you can be the sickest player on earth, doesn't actually mean you're going to fit great into a team. And that's where the actual very high skill ceiling of CS comes from. Aiming is good, but there's just so many other components you also need to get good at.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. But so basically, you're saying once you reach your own like sort of like skill set in terms of, let's say, aim, mechanics, movement, and all that, right? Then you should really start to dig in like the meta game, the tactics, the team play, right?
Yes, absolutely. Because what often happens, yeah.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Because what often happens is, okay, you're actually a really good aimer. Some players are nuts aimers. They're absolutely incredible. And okay, they then start maybe looking for a team. They find a nice team. But a few players who haven't actually played in a team environment, fair enough. That's how you get your start. They play together and they come against some players who mechanics wise are below their level, and they get absolutely stomped because all of a sudden you're holding B site and you're blind the entire way. The enemy team is already there. The bomb's already down and half of your team is dead and you have no idea what happened. Mechanics will only get you so far, and that's why finding an actual team is important.
Okay, but how do you then start like practicing? Like, can you do something on your own in regards to like practicing team play? Like you mentioned, like, yeah, you need to learn your grenades, right? All right, that's one thing, right? But like, is there a way like to improve yourself individually to become a better team player, so to say, right?
Yes, one of the ways is there's a few ways. If we talk specifically about grenades, flashbangs, smokes, things like that, even HEs to some extent, where you have lineups and Molotovs, there are websites where you can learn them. And one series that actually started just recently, there's a website called Leadify. And what they did is they go through all of the professional games. They analyzed everything and they came up with the best professional flashbang. So things that pro players do and things that you can then apply to your own game. Because if you know how to flash yourself in to a position where you're going to take an unfair fight, where you have the advantage, you're probably going to get the kill. That can also apply. Hey, now I have a teammate. Okay, so tell him, hey, I'm going to do this. And he's going to go in and get frags for free. Even better, right? Because then you have two people who just took on two other people, and all of a sudden you're in a 5-on-3 advantage. Things like that will help. It's working on your game, but also helping your team. Other than that, it's a lot of it comes down to experience, seeing what works. Often you'll see, I'm going to use Mirage B site as an example. You're going to see when players are new to a team environment, you're going to have another player, and obviously you don't know what he's going to do if he's not on your team. So the hit starts coming in, and what happens is you're going to get two people picking separate fights. As a team, you need to work on, okay, so this guy is playing one position. Where do I go to make sure I can still help him out, or he can help me out without just, me going off on my own and then dying off on my own? Things like that you can work on your own, but it's going to take you actually analyzing your own game, seeing what's going on and what you're doing wrong. Yeah. That would be the start.
But basically, like what I understand, right? So once you reach individually like the aims, right? I think then you need to kind of put a lot more focus into analyzing the game, researching and doing all that stuff, and stop practicing game a bit less, right?
Yeah, watching demos.
Practice. Yeah, watching demos, doing research, like right? I remember I did a fair share of this back in my day when I was like in-game leader for our team. Like, and back in the day, you didn't have that many sites. You basically went to, I think, hltv.org. You downloaded all the individual demos.
Well, yeah, to finish off his sentence, it is true what he said. You go to hltv.org and you download the demos and you just watched what other players did, what worked out for them. Maybe if you had a demo on the opponent, you check what they're doing, how maybe you can counter that, things like that. And I hope Exa will be back soon because, hey, it's a day for technical issues.
I would ask, following up on this, say watching demos and learning. Okay, so when does this kick in? I would imagine at the very beginning, when you are a very novice player, maybe it makes sense to watch some of this stuff. Then it's a period of grinding, and then at some point you restart that again?
In a way, yeah, it's never too early to start watching demos. It's just that when you're a beginner, when it comes to CS, I'd say anything under 1,000 hours is a beginner. CS is obviously a very, very old game. There's players who have played it for tens of thousands of hours. So when you're a beginner, yeah, you can watch it and pick up some very basics. And then you grind. And then when you're at a higher level, you're going to watch the same demo. You're going to notice a lot more things. It's something you can always do. And as you grow as a player, you're going to start noting smaller and smaller details that will still help you improve. Just maybe not as much of a jump as when you were a beginner. Yeah.
In such a, sorry, I'm hijacking a little bit the questions, but since we're waiting for the host to be able to connect back again. So at which stage does it help you to get an analyst or somebody, another person look at your game and start actually advising you on how to improve? Is this organically your teammates, or can be even some external person?
So the way CS works is obviously your teammates can help you as well, because two pairs of eyes see more than just one. It's always helpful to get a second opinion. In terms of analysts, CS has this coach role, which Valve kind of shoved aside from the in-game, moved them more to an analyst role about a month ago, are still very important. An analyst sees everything, right? When you're playing CS, you only see what you see. You can't see what your teammates see, but a coach in a server or an analyst or watching the demo later will see everything at the same time. And he sees things nobody will ever see. He can deduct everything from basically watching. And he's like, okay, you should do this because I can tell it's open. And the player will be like, well, I don't know it's open. And the coach will be, yes, I know it's not. You can't see it's open, but because of all of the other three of your teammates can see it's open, it's also open for you. Things like that. But you do need an analyst if you want to get really serious. An analyst can be a teammate, but then it's just the teammate will have to watch the demos again, whereas the analyst can actually give you feedback in real time. Coaches in most cases do that.
Yeah. So
hey guys.
Hey Kay.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
All right, I'll try to fix it. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry, just threw me off.
You said the analyst is helping you, is even real time. Also on competitions, can there be the sixth player making the difference?
Yes, and okay, so there's never actually been a lot of discussion about this. Everyone is of the opinion that yes, coaches can make a big difference, but Valve kind of decided that for everyone. Back in, was it 2016? I'm not sure on the dates right now. Maybe Eggs will know even more than I do. Basically, teams were starting, just to go over the basics of roles in CS, you have a few roles, but the most important one tends to be IGL or the in-game leader. That he is usually one player on the server. And back in 2016, around there, I think, the IGL role, because of the way the game was designed, started moving more and more towards a coach, because the coach still can be in the server at the same time as the players and communicate with them. So effectively had a sixth player there who was able to see everything and call for the team. And then Valve came in and said, no, and banned coaches at official events from speaking at any time except during timeouts. And teams actually started doing it. Navi was a very famous example. They had Seized, who was an in-game leader. His fragging was all right, but starting to lag behind a bit from the newer players who are really good aimers. Flamey came in at that time and I was like, okay, we'll move you to a coach. And they moved him to coach. And 1 month later, the whole coaching ban came in and everything kind of went poof. But yes, an analyst or a coach, lost his job. An analyst or a coach sees so much more. It's actually unfair how much more info he has compared to everyone in game.
So it must make a difference. Otherwise, they wouldn't have banned them.
Yeah, and now they banned them again from even talking to the teams or being present with the teams at all during official Valve events. Obviously, there were some other things such as potential stream sniping, but right now, coaches, as Valve sees it, are only supposed to be analysts and nothing else. It's kind of like how League of Legends does it in LCS, right? If I can use them to compare. They have a coach. The coach is basically an analyst. He does the pick ban phase and then he has to go away. He cannot talk to the team at all. And CS has adopted a very similar approach. So the coach and analyst right now are fairly interchangeable, just that they might focus on different parts. Maybe you have a performance coach, you have a tactics coach, things like that. Depends on the team. Well, that's what's basically happened, and they're just so important because they see so much.
Because I would imagine fast forward 5 years, so to say, okay, the coach or the analyst, there could be 5 of them or 10 of them supporting 5 players, and those 10 people could use AI technology, visual recognition, whatever you want, you know. They could actually be 20 people playing on one side, so to say, you know.
I wouldn't put it past it. CS already has a lot of ways to get that out of the game. You have websites that will just download the demo review and tell you what you did good, what you did wrong. It's absolutely unreal how accurate it already is. In 5 years, you're just going to have a dedicated PC with a bunch of NVIDIA cards just mining all of the data, and it will tell you exactly, if you do this, you have a higher percentage of winning. I think that's also why Valve tried to limit the role of the coaches, because it's just going to swing it towards one team.
Exactly. Yeah. Exe, are you back?
Yeah, but my camera is not working. Maybe that was the reason why it just threw me off.
Okay,
you can hear me good and well, right?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, cool. I can see you guys. You're smiling very good. Yeah, Zoom is not giving us any bonuses today. Cool. Yeah, like what I just listened in, and like what you guys are saying, right? Like this is also something that's gonna probably be a bit more like important for like the viewership going forward, right? Because I imagine like you already have this, and I think this is only gonna get better, more improved. Like you have for poker, you'll have mid-round odds, like which team is gonna win the round, right? What are the odds for like winning this round, if it's 5v5, if it's 3v3 and stuff like that. And I'm sure betting will be there as well, right? You could bet mid round basically almost, right? And that's,
I mean, you basically already have all of that in CS.
Yeah. Like I can only imagine where all of this will go forward, right? In the future, it should be pretty dope. Cool. Maybe let's go to the next topic, right? Because like as I understood you, right, you're now searching for a team. But let's say you're now playing on a team, right? And let's say you're the superstar right there, right? You're the best player on it. You know like a lot more than any of your teammates do. Like, do you think is it better for you as an individual to just leave those guys behind and go find a better team and then risk, right? Of course, finding chemistry, finding that team, building it all over again? Or is it like better that you would sacrifice your own individual personal CSGO growth in order to make the team better and like spend more time making your teammates better, so to say, right?
Right. This is a question
what's your take on that?
It's honestly slightly difficult to answer. Once again, because of the skill ceiling of CS, you have actual examples of this very question at a professional level, which I'll get to later. Right now, let's assume you're just breaking into the top 1% and you're looking for teams. The skill differences are so huge that actually, yes, if you're the star player, you should, okay, you don't jump immediately, stick around for a bit, but if a better offer comes knocking for a better team where you wouldn't be the star player anymore, you'd be at the lower half, you should change teams in this case and not sacrifice yourself for a team just because of the skill gap discrepancies being so huge. At a higher level, once the actual skill starts to kind of compress, comes to a certain stage where, well, even if you get a hell of a lot better, the other players are just so nutty that it's not going to make that much of a difference. There is a player who has done this called Nico, and his example would state that it's better for you to sacrifice yourself for the team than it is for you to go to progressively better and better teams as he has done, and he still hasn't won a major. In fact, in the history of CS, quite often you have players like Simple, same thing. He went to a much better team, came to the semifinals, came to the finals, again, hasn't won a major. He lost to teams that worked together better. Not that those teams weren't stacked with talent, let's get that straight, but he was known as being one of the best players. And in fact, right now, he is the number 2, some argue even number 1 player. So at the very top, you have to sacrifice yourself for the team. When it comes to starting out competitively, skill gap difference is so big, just move on to a different team.
Yeah. It's like I'm gonna go again with I think like Tom can like trademark this section already for like the meetups. I'm gonna go now into like comparison with the real sports, right? Because I just like to do that. It's the same. It was the same with Michael Jordan, right? He was that good. That he then at one point he just had to sacrifice his own game, right, to make the Bulls better, and that's totally fair and on point, I think. So even Simple and Nico will have to kind of like take different roles, like sacrifice, adjust in order to win the major, right? And but also let's not forget even like winning a major, right? There's just so many things that need to kind of like fall into its place, right? It's hard, so to say, right? But so it is with any like world championship, so to say, right? In any sport. Cool. All right. Maybe another one. Like, how would let's say we now let's say we found a few prospected talents, young ones here in Slovenia. They kind of like reach their ceiling, like they can't find a team. Like, how would they go about finding an international roster? Like you said, yeah, you have Face It, and then you can play there and like find a team there. Like, are there any other ways? What would maybe be the best approach for this?
So we actually have some examples we can use here, which is really good and really helpful for some players who now, after a very long time since actually Savvy and NTG, who were the last semi-professional players in Slovenia who went international and had some pretty good success, we finally have some very young players actually who have done this. So right now in Slovenia specifically, there's let's call it two teams that I know of so far, which are actually playing. They're still amateur because it's hard in Slovenia, right? We're still a small nation. We still have a very limited amount of players. But compared to our size, we're still punching way above our weight. Even in real sports, Slovenia is absurdly good based on how many people we have. And that's Dragons Esports, which have been fairly quiet so far. I have no idea what they're doing. Sorry, but they are actually pretty good. They've been practicing together a lot, and one of their players, Destro, especially, is crazy good. And then you have Isox, which also has a decent young player who hasn't proven himself to be as good as Destro, in my opinion, or in Faceit's opinion, so far, which is Stinsty. And then you have the other players who are far above their level at the moment. But what they've actually done is they went to the Balkan region, the Adriatic region. This is Uni, Gerne, Aljek, players like that. Who Uni, for example, right now plays in ESEA main, which is just one league step below what is often considered to be semi-pro. And they just recently signed with an organization which actually covers their entry fees, pays their monthly fees, gives them a server, TeamSpeak server, and actually some money per month. So by definition, he now is actually a semi-professional player because he makes some money on the side, but it's not his main source of income right now. So I think that's actually a very good starting block, and for a lot of Slovenians, perfectly doable. You speak in English anyway, maybe throw in some Serbo-Croatian, you just mix it up and it can work out. You have some pretty good high potential teams from the Adriatic region, and it's shown in the past in the Intel CE champion CSGO, which was about countries from Central Europe, which don't necessarily have professional teams. You've had teams from the Adriatic region actually reach the finals. And you have players from Slovenia who are very close to the level of those teams. So just doing that, I think that's fine enough. And maybe one day one of those teams will be good enough to actually contest professionally. That's what happened with Nico, actually. It was an I-Nation. He was known as good. And then the team didn't have good results. They were about the same results as what these teams have right now. They just got picked up by a better team because they have Mousesports, because they saw potential in him. And that's entirely possible that this is going to happen to a Slovenian player in the future. We just don't know yet.
Hopefully. Yeah, makes sense.
So I have a question here, if I may. So, okay, you can search for international teams or other organizations by yourself, and I think most of the people are pretty capable. I think that's the default path you take. When does in this story like agencies or agents come in, or when can they help you on this stage, and when they cannot help, or where, let's say, where is the value of these people helping you find a team?
So right now in CS, there are player agents. DK, one of the most famous journalists who was known for breaking a lot of stories, just moved into an agent role, and there are a few agencies. Just that I don't know any specific, it's a very small market so far. I don't think there's any specific agencies that would happen to help players at a semi-professional level. None that I know off the top of my head that you would represent an agency, right? That's what you're going at. An agency would sign a player. I don't think that's actually something that's happening in CS right now, but it's a potentially really interesting idea because it is still kind of an old boys club. At the high end, you often see the same players being recycled over and over and over, and it's not really working out. So that's maybe something that would be interesting. I don't know what Exa thinks about this.
Thanks.
Yeah, like you said, but I have like, I don't know, with the agencies, I have like this strange feeling, like not strange feeling, but like unless you're really top tier talent, right, or player, I think sometimes, or like most of the time, and that's maybe just my opinion, which could be totally wrong. I think these agencies are just trying to like earn money off of you and not really get the best deals for you specifically, right? Because I've known like a couple of stories from like from real sports, right? Where like you had some younger prospective players that were like kind of good, but then just kind of they saw some agencies saw their talent, they kind of signed them, like they had to pay a fee and blah blah blah, and like then they sold them out, and they were kind of like ripped off, or like they didn't get the service they should be getting from an agency, right? I'm totally speculating here as well, but yeah, like, let's see.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes if it actually comes to be player agencies, especially for lower end. Usually, how I think agencies should operate is based on, okay, we helped you find a contract. In the contract, the agency gets paid a set fee plus a percentage of what you earn, because theoretically, they helped you find that much higher earning of a deal. And I think that's fair. Just that I'm pretty scared about esports in general. It's in a bit of a, not a bit, quite a bubble in some respects. It's actually why CS doesn't have a lot of VC venture capitalist interest, because it's at this stable level, which is still very good. You have 1 million concurrent players, you have events nonstop, you have a lot of very good teams. It's kind of plateaued. I think what actually happened is most of these agencies and type of things moved on to other games and tried to avoid CS because you know what you're going to get, which is fine. I just kind of get the feeling that's not what a lot of them are interested in. They want to find the next big thing, which CS is not going to be. It already is the big thing alongside Dota and League of Legends at the moment. That's just my take on the situation. Honestly, we'll see what happens, right?
That's a good point, right? But but to see us like reputation, the good thing is like the game still stayed there for like 20 plus years, right? I don't think it's going anywhere. But yeah, like everyone's looking for a shiny new object, but it's just the way it is in the world. It's like it's not that's like a general thing. But I think like still, and we've discussed this on our first meetup, I think CSGO is still like one of the most viewable esports, most attractive, so to say. But yeah, like let's see where all of this goes. Of course, like maybe one day a new game will come in and like everyone will jump on it and it will be just that good. But let's see. Cool. You just said, you mentioned a bit like you're looking for a roster, or like international roster. How are you going about that? Like, what steps are you taking specifically, so to say, right? Or like.
So there's two ways to go about it. One of the ways is if you actually know people who would be interested or already in a team, you can ask them, hey, try me out. If he's your friend, he's like, yeah, I'll give you a shot, see how it goes. Or maybe you have 5 people and you all kind of want to make a team. It's like, do it, try it out, go have a tournament or 2. That's one way. The other way, if you're looking for a solo team, the current steps for CS are you have to go online. There's a subreddit, Recruit CS, where you can make a post, you're looking for a team and you find players there. Or there's actually nowadays dedicated websites where you can post an advert. It's kind of like LinkedIn for CS in some ways, where you post an advert, or teams post adverts if you're looking for players, and you just contact people there. And usually then you're just like, hey, I'm interested, and it goes from there. You arrange a trial. Most of the time you try it out, see if you fit in. If you don't, hey, you can always keep looking. It's also down to how long you actually want to spend looking. If you're just looking for a quick team, I'm sure you can find them. If you're looking for something a bit more quality, it's going to take a while. It also depends a lot on when you're actually searching for teams. Right now, ESEA Open is currently mid-season, so there's not a lot of teams actively searching because they're playing in a league. But after, during the off-season time, kind of like in sports, when it's the off-season is when most of the player transactions happen. So if you're looking for a team in CS, I'd say wait until March and then start looking. And by the end of March, you'll be able to find whatever you want. Unless you're looking for something that's way above
I'm not like,
level.
as I'm a bit of an old dog here, I'm not that into it, but like, do you need to like show like you said, LinkedIn for CS, like you have to show your references, and by that I mean like show your demos or like some top plays or achievements or like that.
So what used to be the case is you'd hit someone up. It's like, hey, you're looking for a player, and you'd have a quick tryout, and then you'd get a yes or no, and that would be it, right?
Okay. So
Now
it's basically like this is how it was, you say?
Yeah, that's how, at least in my back in source, it was, right? And now, from my experience, specifically what's happened for the very high-end teams, there was a trial and an interview, and then they decided based off the 12 players. That was the normal one. Some of the people go, in my opinion, way overboard when you're starting out and looking at a professional team. What's most important is finding a good personality fit for your team, so you don't just flame each other in this ban after 2 games. That's pointless. Even if you would be a better player with someone who's flaming, there's just no point. And what a lot of the teams now do is they'll contact you, they'll look at your Faceit profile, or if you have an ESA profile, they'll download your demos, they'll check how you're playing, see if your playstyle fits and all that. And it's a bit ridiculous, in my opinion, because the top 1% of CS is a hella good player, but if we're talking about a professional level of CS, not even close. That's where you'd actually have to get into teams analyzing you. But right now, they actually want you to send demos. How are you playing? Who did you play with? What is your experience? What lands did you compete in? Where did you place? Do you have a movie compilation? Do you have a game you really want to show us? And they just dig into everything on you before you even get a chance to try out. And it's a bit much, in my opinion.
I guess that this is like like not the downside, but this is what you get with like evolving, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Even like that's like before that, right? Like even if you're searching for a job, right? Before social media, right? You could be a drink head, like you could be wasted every weekend. And like if nobody knew it, you would get hired, right? If you were now getting wasted every weekend and posted on Facebook, right? You won't get a job. And it's the same, like it, but yeah, like you said, maybe sometimes it's a bit ridiculous, but I guess it's what you get with evolving and getting bigger and like getting a bigger pool of the players, right?
Yeah, as the scene involves, there's this trickle down effect of what is acceptable at the top starts moving lower and lower. When you had CS 1.6, if a team got paid 500 a month euros, it was an obscene amount. Now, if you get paid 500 a month, it's nothing, right? Top teams have absolutely ludicrous salaries, and it started to trickle down to lower levels where teams, which a while ago would have been completely amateur, nowadays get a pretty competitive salary. If you live in a low cost of living country, 500 euros will go a long way. And that's kind of the standard. 300, I think, is kind of the standard for low-end semi-pro teams. And because of that, the whole requirements thing of them analyzing everything about it, making sure you're absolutely the one fit, has come down to an even lower level.
And like, to be honest, like now thinking about it on the fly, right? I'm not seeing this getting any easier. I see it only get even worse, right? In sense of in the future, maybe in a year or two, like if like just because, and like this is the point, right? Because the money comes in, then you have investors, and investors want to get reliable people. And I can only see this going that far that like if you would want to like get hired for a team or like trial or get a contract, you would actually be given psychological tests, like cognitive tests and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure that's coming. Like if because it like the people behind it who have vested interest, they'll want to like nitpick, right? Although I'm not saying I'm against those tests, it's sometimes that it's just not, they're not that reliable after all, right? Like you can score bad on a test, but you can be like a great CS player and a good fit in a particular team, right? You can't just filter out everything. But yeah, makes sense. I wanted to say something else. I'm wondering, but yeah, good, very good points. Because I wanted to say like back in my day, but I was actually like when we left our team, which I built, the Shadow Warriors. I was searching for another team, and like how it happened is I just pinged a few players, right? Like when we were mixing, and they said, yeah, go 1-on-1 with me, and then we went. That was it, right? Like it was just
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
a street fight. So yeah, like it's evolving. It's a good thing. Cool. All right. So tell me, like you probably have a bit more insights. Like what are some major difficulties for like a young CS:GO player in Slovenia to like assert himself or like to become a professional CS:GO player that he's facing, right?
To some extent, nationality actually plays a
All
part,
right.
especially in a lot of cases. But if you're a player from Denmark and you have Denmark is currently at the very top of nations when it comes to CSGO. They have some obscenely good talent and free teams that could compete for the top spot, things like that. It's absolutely incredible. If you're from Denmark, you're gonna be favored, and some guy from Slovenia, who some people have, well, now they've heard of, thankfully, due to globalization. The word about this small country of ours has gotten around. But before that, and for example, you played 1.6, I played Source. If you look for an international team and you said you're from Slovenia, they're like, they have computers there. And that actually hurt you a lot because they weren't even willing to trial you because language, right? International teams mostly speak English. You could have Slovenian players actually join German teams. Some Slovenians speak very good German, especially in the northern part of the country. So that's maybe an advantage. And the other thing that's actually, I think it's just the fact that we don't have a pedigree, right? We never had a top player, and it's kind of like this. You look at, it applies to every sport. You look at, for example, the current state of the Ukrainian scene has Simple. The Russian scene is basically like, yeah, Simple is one of ours as well, the CIS region. For the French, you have Zaiwu. Denmark obviously has Astralis, which is just incredibly good at the moment. Brazil has a lot of good teams, and you have personalities like Fallen. You don't have this one guy or one team who's already at a pro level in CS who would drag new players in and make new players interested. It's like, hey, he's my idol. I want to be like this guy. You don't have that in CS. And whoever will be the first player who drags himself out of this and becomes a professional will probably become that kind of beacon of hope for all of the other players. And I think that's one of the major things we're lacking right now.
That's a really good point. Like going back to regular sports, like we need first Marko Milic so we can get Luka Doncic, right?
Yeah, or if you look at Tina Maze, or when the football team made it to the World Cup. Yeah, when the football team made it to the World Cup and there was suddenly a huge interest in football. It's a fact of life for every nation, actually. And it's one of those things that we're just gonna need to hope or force a way for there to be a Slovenian team or a Slovenian player who doesn't even have to be at the very top of the professional scene. He just has to be there, be like, hey, I can make a living off of this. And kids, where for better or worse, or younger people even, they don't have to be kids, will look up to this guy and be like, hey, maybe I can put some effort into this. Not sacrifice my life, but put an effort. It's my goal. I want to do this. And just that passion and desire can go a really long way towards actually making it possible.
I remember like back in CS 1.6 days, I think. I can't remember the team, but I remember like, yeah, we were all watching the SK back in the days and like Noah clans and like the Neolithic and all of those old school teams, right? They were like top teams back in the day. What was interesting, like Clan Base at the time actually organized a nationals tournament, right? And Slovenia kind of like built a team, right, of like top players, and like there were some of pretty good ones. And I remember like after Slovenia competed in that competition, and like just to be fair, we got thrashed most of the time. But like you saw actually like the guys you could be mixing previous night, right, on 5v5, they were playing like Fisker and Heaton, right, with against Sweden. We were like, oh fuck, like this is real, right? You can get there. Like, yeah, I'm still not that good as like they are, but like I want to get there, right? And that's always helping. Even like getting to sort of like mid level, then a bit higher and higher, right?
And that's one of the really good things about CS. It's not locked behind being a professional player like some other games do, which have a heavily curated pro scene. If you go to, for example, let's say DreamHack has qualifiers which are completely open to any team, any player. You just sign up and you might end up playing against some pro players. And that's a huge motivation for a lot of people. You have this idol you really like. I know there's a person in Slovenia who really likes Device. And just because he wanted to play against him, he got really good at CS. He doesn't play it anymore, but it was a massive motivation for him. It's really important to have someone you can look up to. And if there happens to be a Slovenian player, that would have an even better effect on the Slovenian scene, in my opinion.
Yeah. But just like, like just so we're clear, like even when you get that match, right, you probably get blown out of the server, like, and that's because they're just so many levels higher. But you still, it's
you
probably
have to play against them.
Yeah, but it's probably the most fun you'll have getting trashed, right? Like you're still gonna have a lot of fun, even though you probably won't even like get a kill or anything. But yeah, like these are some really good experiences.
It's going to be a 16-2 and you're going to get trashed. You're going to pick up 2 rounds and you're going to be so happy about those 2 rounds.
You're going to put it in your movies, in your demos, in your CV, your CSGO CV, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely true. Cool. Just like maybe one last topic that I had like in mind for today. What do you think, like what else could like, or like what do you think Slovenia has the potential to like for young players or like individuals to do besides like becoming pro players? Like should they look for maybe specializing in some other like CSGO related jobs as like coaches, streamers, players, organizers, influencers? I don't know. What's your take on that?
So in that regard, it's possible. It's definitely doable. We don't have anyone right now. As far as coaches go, I think that's perfectly doable, right? It's a completely different skill set. Obviously, coaches, while they are still very good players, they're still far better than the vast majority of the player base compared to actual professional players will get absolutely whitewashed. This has happened in every event where a coach had to stand in. The team got absolutely smashed. But it is a skill set that maybe someone from Slovenia could pick up over time. Just get that analytical mind for a game. Start coaching organizations at a semi-professional level. Coaches do get paid at a semi-professional level and are basically mandatory. A coach and an analyst is a part of every semi-professional team right now. And usually those teams also have maybe a dedicated streamer or two which cast their games. You could actually do it, and maybe some teams in Slovenia themselves could get that going. It would be very grassroots, very amateur at the start. CSGO actually doesn't have any influencers right now because in Slovenia, CS is not currently the most watched game. Yeah, commentators too, for example. We actually have, this is probably the prime example, thanks for bringing it up. I have done casting professionally I did it for semi-professionally for half a year. We have actual professional casters over, one of them. Then we have some other ones like Zerman. He also does it semi-professionally. So we have, there was Fat Flat Frog that got Prodan. He was a professional caster for a while. He actually moved to Lithuania to work on it. He worked for a whole studio. He helped organize CS tournaments. So we actually, maybe we don't have the players, but in other parts of CS, in this kind of production side, Over actually also helped with Elephant. Adacor helped organize Gfinity, when they were still operating for CSGO. So we actually do have a lot of people in that regard. And even right now, if you look at events in Slovenia, CS is very hard to organize. It's incredibly hard to administer because there's so many things that can go wrong. It's not like League of Legends. You click a custom game, you make it. No, you have to get a server up. You have to get a plugin in. You have to make sure the game starts on time, external databases. Then you need a GoDV demo. Then you need a camera. There's a lot of things. And in that regard, I think Slovenia actually has a fair few people who could do things like this. Just that right now, we're limited to Slovenia. Obviously, the coronavirus crisis isn't helping things that much. But if, for example, there was a more Adriatic-wide region thing, I think you could have quite a few Slovenians impact there and then eventually move on to other things. We have a few Faceit admins as well. I think they stopped, but they help with the Faceit leagues, ECL, what it was called, helped administrate it as well. In that regard, we actually have quite a few people. So maybe that's something a lot of people should consider. If you feel like you have a good mindset for organizing and scheduling things, try it as an admin, see where that gets you. Because good administrators are few and far between. So if you happen to be a good one, you could probably find something much easier than as a player, which, well, there are a lot of.
Yeah, true that.
I had exactly a question on this topic before you brought it up, as the last question, actually. Going back to professional players, okay, being only a good player, it might be a part of the story. A part of the story of being a sports or esports player is also being in the media, or let's say being having a good attitude towards the media, being a pleasant person to talk to. You know, at the end of the day, you are paid. Your living is paid by sponsors, by people investing their brands in you, and you being a nice person or producing visibility for these brands. How, as I say, are there examples, let's say, known that some players that are not that really highly skilled, but they can compensate their positions in top teams in the world just because they are good in front of media, or they are really good influencers, or they are really good streamers alongside their skill?
They're good for the marketers, basically. Yeah.
Do we have any such examples?
Yes, there actually is one very famous example of someone setting himself on fire when they were about to win a game versus a very good team. Accidentally killed himself in a Molotov and spawned a meme of 1G, which actually made it into CSGO itself. So there's this streamer called Summit 1G, who pulled in regular 20,000 viewers. Also was a very good CS player, not at the level of the very top professional levels, but was a very good semi-professional player. I'd say about the level of some of the very, very, very top free Slovenian players right now. Obviously, players have gotten better over time, as that was back in 2018, 2017. And the team needed a stand-in. So they picked him up, and he actually played pretty well, and he brought in a lot of viewers to that team because, hey, he brought his entire stream viewer base. 20,000 people, that's nothing to scoff at. In esports, that's quite a lot. When a tournament is pulling 200,000 viewers, 10% of your entire viewership coming in from one player for that one team, it's huge. And it's also relevant because of the sticker money. Now, the sticker money does get shared between teams, but there are autograph capsules. And if you're a more charismatic guy or just really good at CS, but even players who might not be as good but are charismatic, their stickers are worth a lot, and you get a cut of the sticker sales. So if you sell more of them, you get more money. And in that way, yeah, it can happen. Just that at the very top, highly unlikely, because teams need players who are really good, even if they might not be as media friendly as some other players.
Yeah, we're talking about Dennis Rodmans and like Mario Balotellis of real sports, right? Like, yeah.
Controversial personalities, to put it
exactly,
mildly.
right? I mean, but like the problem I see with those kind of people, right? Like I think like what's the problem here? They always have to go one controversial level higher, right? To keep the same engagement, basically, right? You can start with something small, but then every time you like, if you're doing something like really like weird, you always have to kind of like outdo than yourself, right? You're not there just because of you, like your CS skill, you always, if you're a showman, you always have to make better show, right? This is how Dennis Rodman ended up marrying himself and like, I don't know where, but like it's how it progresses, I believe. But yeah, like these are some good examples. Like any other question from anyone or Tom, like you have anything else you want to bring up?
I'll go with one more so that the other audience can warm up. About who makes more money? It's still the players or those let's say influencers, streamers.
I'd say influencers still make a fair bit more. The ones who make the most are those who can combine both, such as Shroud. Shroud started out as being a semi-professional CS player, got picked up by Cloud9, made bank because he was a massive personality because of his aim. Personally, I don't see why, because he has no personality, but his stream is still massive. There is no denying that. It's absolutely huge. Then he got picked up by Mixer, made millions. Now he streams, he makes millions as well. Influencers will always make more money, but I think some professional players at the very top, because of the way Valve handles sticker money and because of the price pools which the influencers do not have access to, can actually make pretty comparable amounts. It's just that we're talking about a couple of million per year for people like Shroud and over $1 million and a bit for people like Simple.
But it's good for, I think, for even starting players or young guys and girls who want to go pro. It's not necessarily you go pro as a pro player. You can go the streaming career, influencing career. You can go the coaching career once you're good enough. And these are all viable options.
And you actually have an example of such a player called Nadosafix, who was a content creator on YouTube and now plays for Lyngby Vikings. I'm not sure if you get how they get paid. I'm not actually up to date on that. They definitely get some money, right? And he started out as a content creator, pretty good player, worked up over time, got some shots at subbing in for teams like Complexity, which is huge, right? Top 10 team. And now he actually plays for a team professionally. And you can actually start as a streamer. It helps you out because it kind of builds up that CV we were talking about. Like you got some sick clips. Hey, why don't you come join us, right?
Cool.
Thanks.
Like now we can invite the audience to chime in. Like if you guys have any questions, feel free to like ask or drop in the comments. Or like if you really have any like further things you might want to add or like want to discuss, now's the perfect time to do it.
So maybe just one thing before any questions. So in regards to going pro in CS is something that people have to realize is that it's hard. It's insane. It's just, it goes for any sports, right? It's hard. It's insanely hard. The people who go pro, with very, very few exceptions like Zaiwu, who is just the chosen one for a lot of reasons, go through 8 to 12 to 14 hours of CS a day. They do school, they do CS, and they do nothing else. So think if it's actually worth it, because as Tom mentioned, maybe going the streamer route, seeing if this is actually for you, just trying out in a team before you want to dedicate yourself for this, because it goes for any sport really, or any video game. If you want to go pro, you have to be willing to give up a lot more than the average person. So think if it's actually worth it for you. And if it is, hey, give it a shot. If you fail, all right, at least you still have things you're still doing, right? Don't drop out of school for this. There are pro players who have done it, and I highly disagree with it. And it's an example that Zaiwu, who's the current #1 player, talked to his parents and they said, look, finish high school, then you can do whatever. He did that and he didn't lose any progress. Finish high school, then you can go pro. See, hey, if it's for you, take a year or two, try it out. If it's for you, great. If not, you always have fallback options. And that's something I think people sometimes blindly believe, like, hey, I'll make, it's kind of like investing. Hey, I'll make it. This is the next big thing. It's likely not. So make sure you have some backup options just in case.
Backup options, I would say, I would also add here, like, be mindful, like for all the young players out there, right? be mindful that this is not an overnight success, and like whichever route you pick, whether that's a professional CS:GO player or if it's like top 1% streamer or top one commentator, right? This is not going to happen by you practicing that particular skill 1 year, 14 hours a day. 1 year is not enough. But what helps with this approach, right, is that don't get overwhelmed or discouraged by just like us, let's say on this meetup that we tell you, all right, guys, you'll need to put in like 3, 4, 5 years of hard work into this and say, oh fuck, I don't have 3, 4, 5 years. Take it one step at a time, right? Start somewhere, do it day in and day out, and this is how you'll get there. And this is the thing that it happened to me. I didn't start playing CS for like thinking I'll go to tournaments or do it. I did it for fun. I did it like because Cyber Cafe was open and like didn't have anything else to do on Saturday morning. I went there, developed the skill, and then like it gradually like you start with time, right? You start to love even the hard things, and like once you get to that point, it gets a bit easier, and then you just kind of need to go keep moving forward. Made some good decisions on the road, and you might as well end up there, right? But just don't get, if you really want it, don't get discouraged, and like you will you will find yourself in the intersections, right? Where you have to choose, all right, this way or that way, right? But it's one step at a time, and like just don't think of like, oh, this is like 5 years from now. Like maybe it will work for you in 2 years or in 1 year, right? But be mindful it might take even 8 years. But if you're willing to just like go step by step, day by day, it's nothing that's not manageable. That's all I'm saying.
I think that
And
goes for everything, not just for esports.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, esports is very much like any other sports or any other passion thing you do in life. And especially don't get discouraged by what a lot of people nowadays, there is this kind of preconception or notion that if you're not in the professional scene by 18, that you're going to be just some washed up old dude who has to apply WD-40 on himself every morning just to make sure his joints are still working. It's absolutely ridiculous. You have players who started playing professionally at 25 to 28. You have people like Neo and Taz and Pasha, especially Virtus Pro, a very famous example. 3 people who had kids, whole families were, well, middle-aged really, and they were still really good at CS. There's this preconception that once you're old, your gaming skills go down because your reaction time goes down or something like it. It's just something that kind of is getting passed around and is used as an excuse to hand wave away people that, hey, yeah, Pasha has an academy team and I was helping younger players. You have players like Hunden who are helping other players and still really good players. You have people like Ocean in the USA who have brought up people like Stewie 2K and Tens and stuff like that. It's kind of ridiculous how people think that, hey, if you want to be an esports player, you have to be good at 16 and then you have to be in a professional team by the time you're 20 or you're written off.
I would say it helps if you start young, but it's definitely not possible. You will always have outliers, right?
Exactly.
That will in that regard as well, right? But yeah, like also one thing to mention here, right? Yeah, like we can't deny that you're like with time and with you aging, you lose some of that edge. Like I see it for myself. Like I don't see that clearly as I did like 10 years ago. But still, like that doesn't mean you're done. Like you should quit. Like there are ways for you to adapt to every situation, and like you can be that better in like predicting the game and analyzing the game or just leading the team, right? That doesn't mean you have to be like simple or Zaiwu with aim skills and all that, right? You can be helpful in many other ways as well, right? You just need to like take stock of your strengths and weaknesses and then like improve on those, right?
I mean, hey, Zeus won his first major at 30, so, you know,
Yeah.
never too late. Unless you're 80, then well, we might have other things to discuss.
You
but,
have
hey,
silver
old
snipers.
teams. Yeah,
You have
you have
silver
silver snipers and things like that. So, hey, it's actually great to see, even if, hey, maybe they won't compete, but it's great fun. It's kind of like esports is for everyone, even if gaming is kind of a hobby for younger people, young adults nowadays, and even people hitting their 35s when, hey, gaming is a newer thing, right? The NES came out in 1986. It's not as old as any sport, really. It's just great to see there's a position for everyone. If you really want to make it and you put effort into it and try, hey, at least you'll most likely manage something that will get you paid. Maybe just once, but hey, you're gonna feel good about it when you finally get that money.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Any questions from anyone else? Like, want to chime in with anything? No. Yeah, we think we have like a bit of a little crowd due to probably Zoom issues as well. So like, guys, hopefully you'll be able to get the recording, and like feel free to reach out to us like either on social or like anyhow else if you want like comment, give suggestions or anything. Other than that, like River is as a esports accelerator is organizing a few more meetups. The next one is coming in a couple of days. It's an esport and gaming meetup on 16th, and then we have a Valorant meetup on 18th. So stay tuned for like the Facebook posts, the social media posts. And keep us posted. I'll ask maybe the Reveris team to put out a survey of like you guys like gigs making comparisons to real sports, or is that just annoying? And that's it. Like yeah, thanks Rudy really much. I think like, this was great. Like we had like you were really good speaker. Provided really good insights. I loved it. And thanks.